Well, that was a finish. Uh, just make sure everybody's getting in there all good and everything. As we are live at the moment, making sure that everything good on your end. Do I sound good? I tried to fix some stuff after some audio issues on Wednesday night. Get all of you guys in there. Just let me know what you think. As we're gonna get into this in a moment. I got the finishing order. I'll read it off for everybody. And wow. I mean, the end of that race for about the last 40 laps was looking like it was going to be just a runaway for Chandler Smith. He had the car to beat all day. He had the huge lead. And then out of nowhere, you get problems, maybe. I know he was getting caught up behind lap cars. That did not help whatsoever. But then after that, you have Allgaier and Hill are starting to get quicker, and it's just a huge charge to the front. So, all right, saying I'm all good for the most part. I'm glad to hear that. I think I got the stuff fixed from the other night. I know I started going quiet at different points. But one thing for you guys that watch the NWP, that's really good for you guys versus Eric. You guys are, I think, 5 back now, give or take, if my math is correct. But yeah, so fun race overall. I would say the racing itself did get strung out. Understandable that some people might have been tuning out here or there. I get that. Thank you, MVR owner, saying it's so good we need a 3-minute countdown. I can see if I can find one. Maybe we'll just add in all of the old school intros of NASCAR broadcasts, CBS, old ESPN, maybe old NBC from like 2004 when it wasn't Fuel, because I don't want to get these streams taken down right away. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty decent race. The getting drawn out was understandable for why some people might have tuned out or whatnot. But while you guys are tuning in, I would like to ask you guys for a favor. Could you please lick that like button? Let's see if we can get those likes popping off. That does help the channel a lot. We're going to talk about the Xfinity race. We'll talk about some of the Elliott news that has come out, and we'll go from there. But let's roll right into the finishing order for the 2023 Alsco Uniforms 300. Now, this race had 4 cautions in total, 2 of them for stages, 2 of them for incident. Then you had 8 leaders with 14 lead changes. Not too awful many. Probably not some that, probably some would have thought we would have had more. And then, this race went 200 laps for 2 hours, 11 minutes, 51 seconds. As for the finish, or the finishing order of this, starting off, we had first place Austin Hill, who I think is asserting himself to be a championship level driver this year. So he had a huge charge. I think they said with less than 20 to go, he was 3 seconds back. Chandler Smith, who finished 3rd, we'll talk about in a moment, kind of choked it a bit. I know that some said he was having issues. I would really be interested to see what the true problem was. Did it just lose the handling? But either way, Hill kept on it, kept aggressive, and it got him in position to go up to the front and take that win away at the end, right before the white flag. Justin Allgaier comes home a bridesmaid in the 2nd position. Was solid all day. Wasn't somebody I thought was going to dominate in any way, but was very solid in how he ran today. Of course, we talked about Chandler Smith in 3rd. Led most of the day. I want to say he led a little over 100 laps in this race, but at the end just choked away that lead. And yeah, maybe some of it was out of his control. The lap cars getting in the way with dirty air. I get that. But that was honestly something that surprised me. Then you got Kyle Busch finishing 4th. A lot of us, myself included, expected him to go down to the Xfinity Series and just clean up shop, dominate the day. Ultimately, though, he didn't. He was a top 5 car most of the day, but the handling would go away late in the run. He would have a good middle run car, not good on the restarts, not good in the long runs. It was really interesting to see that. I think it's something that, is going to be a change for Kyle Busch. He doesn't have the best car in the field anymore. Josh Berry in the 5th position. We'll talk about Berry in a bit when we talk about the Chase Elliott news as well. So, I mean, solid run with all of the distractions that he probably has going on in the background. Then in 6th, we have John Hunter Nemechek. Nemechek had to pit early before the end of stage 2 due to a loose wheel. Mired him in the back. There weren't enough cautions to really catch him up with restarts, and that kept him 2 spots behind Busch. So for anyone who's a podcast viewer, good on all of us on this one. 7th place was Sam Mayer. Then 8th place, Riley Herbst. 9th place, Sheldon Creed. Hemrick finished 10th. Kligerman 11th after coming back. And Custer, tail end of the lead lap, in the 12th position. Looking at some of the comments in here, commenting as well that he did not dominate the truck race the whole time either. But he did in the last stage. Truck series is a different animal than the Xfinity series. But looking at some of the stuff real quick, letting you know, coming up this week before we go down to those lapper cars. The first thing I want to bring up to you guys this week is this. We have the Cup race stream tomorrow night, so be sure to tune in after the race for that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then we have the NR Cup Series Race 3 at Darlington on IDK Players channel. I'll be co-commentating that. After 2 races with 8 to go, we still have 34 drivers within a race of the points lead, so championship battle is pretty heavy in that one. And then, of course, Wednesday night on Danny B's channel, we have the NASCAR Weekly Podcast. Now, let's go back into 13th on down. The guys who were a lap or more down or finished out of this race. First car a lap down was Tyler Reddick in 13th. Jeb Burton 14th. Then you have Graf in 15th. 16th was Weatherman. Sammy Smith 17th. And LeBay was the last car a lap down in 18th. Anthony Alfredo was 19th, -2. Kyle Sieg was -2 and 20th. Then Brandon Jones, 21st. Brett Moffitt, 22nd. Kaz Grala, 23rd. He was the last car 2 laps down. Then when you look at the rest of the finishers, 3 laps down or more, 3 down for Ryan Sieg in 24th. Jeremy Clements, 25th. Raja Caruth, 26th. 27th. Ellis Curry, 28th. Jeffrey Earnhardt, 29th. And 30th for Josh Williams. Then 31st, Josh Bilicki was 4 down. Gray Galding, 4 down in 32nd. Brennan Poole would be 4 down as well in 33rd. And then Emmerling was in 34th, -6. Perkins, 35th, -8. Garrett Smithley, 13 laps off the pace in 36th. Parker Retzlaff, last car on track, 14 down. And then Joey Gase fell out of the race. So now, as we talk about this, up at the top, we're going to be having the ticker going to show you the results as well as what's going on this week. The results up here of the 2023 All-Skill Uniforms 300. They'll be rolling throughout the rest of this stream. Now, looking at the chat as well and some other stuff. The United Drills of America with popcorn. Oh, that's right. Napa Racing fan brought up Tyler Reddick had no practice and qualifying in the 45, completely unnoticeable in the Xfinity race except when he was getting lapped. So definitely a very slow start to the season for Tyler Reddick on all fronts. Let's see what else we have. GN NASCAR fan tagged me here saying, also worth noting the 10 pit crews includes including Kyle Busch. We're late getting to the track Friday about the end of stage 1. That is true. I saw they followed them into the track due to bad weather and late flight delays, stuff like that. That was interesting to say the least. I've never seen it before where multiple pit crews of high-level teams in any series come in late or followed in with the camera. I thought that was interesting, definitely. Looking at some of the other stuff we have here. We're going to go through point by point the few things that happened in this race. I think stage 2 was honestly the most interesting part of this race. And then we'll go into Chase Elliott news before we talk about what goes on with tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon with the Cup race. So, by the way, we got 200 watching. Let's click that like button. Let's get to the triple digits of likes while we roll on into this. Now, I want to start off talking about the broadcast. I personally thought the broadcast today was really good. I thought the camera angles were good. I thought the amount of commercials were really good. I get it's the Xfinity Series. Less money goes into the Xfinity Series than the Cup Series, so it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison. Still fruit, though. Still a broadcast. Adam Alexander, I thought, was on it today. I will honestly say, and I know it's an unpopular opinion, at the moment, I think he is performing best of all the Fox analysts. Mike Joy still good, but definitely the broadcasts aren't playing to his strengths. And then also, when you look at the Truck Series, if Adam Alexander isn't there, it's Jamie Little. No offense to Jamie Little. She's much better on pit road. Better than last year, but that's not saying too awful much. But then also the graphics, too. Having real faces, a real starting lineup. Now, granted, I would like it if it went past row 5. But it's building blocks to something that they can do in the Cup Series and make this better. Now, lap 3 was when we had the first incident. John Hunter Nemechek gets into Parker Kligerman. Nemechek was starting from the rear, hard charging to the front, and it spun the 48 around. Kligerman spent the entire day coming back from that. And really nothing much happened after that. You had John Hunter Nemechek winning the first stage. I want to give a shout-out, though, to Riley Herbst. You know, we talked about Riley Herbst finishing 8th. You probably saw that on the ticker above. But on top of that, Riley Herbst got a top 5 in Stage 1, ran 7th in Stage 2, and was all around a top 5 to 8 driver all day. Now, I know that, you know, Gibbs and Gregson are not in this. And I know that it's going to elevate some of the guys who were lesser last year up. But if we're going to critique how Riley Herbst runs when it's bad, we got to praise him a bit when he runs pretty well. And he was in that, like I said, 5th to about 8th and, you know, maybe 9th place range almost the entire day. And credit to him. He's improved a lot as a driver. Do I think he's Cup ready? No, I don't think he's Cup ready until he's consistently challenging for wins. I would say Chandler Smith is more Cup ready at this point. Austin Hill is probably the most Cup ready outside of maybe John Hunter Nemechek in the field. But when you look at the guys that Herbst was racing against, he still was ahead of Creed, Hemrick. He was ahead of Kligerman, Cole Custer. Now, different circumstances had made that happen, but still was you know, up there a bit. Now, Stage 2 is where all the interesting stuff happened. John Hunter Nemechek looked to have the strongest car in the field, honestly. Maybe Smith had one that would stay up there with him, but I didn't see it personally. But he had a loose wheel and had to pit before the end of Stage 2 when nobody else did, miring him back in the field. And I would say that really, you know, one, it cost him the race, but I think it cost him even any shot of a top 5. And that sucks. I know that, you know, he is a full-timer in the series. He still got good points with the stage win. And that 20 team, you know, is a strong one. But that changed for me the whole complexion of the race. He was only able to pit under caution because Josh Berry would spin out. Berry ran very mediocre early in the race, but the car definitely came on later, along with Allgaier's car and Hill's car. Then after that, you had Chandler Smith and Riley Herbst right before Raja Karut's spin that brought up the caution at the end of Stage 2. Those two kind of like got into each other, a little racing incident. I will say, this is my critique of both of them. If it's 2 to go in a stage, don't start beating and banging on each other, because that cost them, I believe, 2 positions. Those 2 points we've seen before in playoff scenarios. 2 points means a huge amount in these scenarios. But you go to the final stage. Kyle Busch took the lead to start with for a little bit, but Chandler Smith takes it, just takes complete control, runs away with the lead. At one point, it was almost like a 4.5-second lead. I mean, he was cruising to a win. Now, 61 to go. You have the final pit stops. You know, Kyle Busch will take the first stop at that point. Sammy Smith was the only one really to lose a ton of time, other than a few in the back that were speeding, because Smith spun into pit road, and with that would end up speeding onto pit road as he had no control over his car. That pretty much took him out of it. And then, you know, 34 to go. You have Chandler Smith running away still with the lead. This is where the first little bits of trouble were, though, because Tyler Reddick was holding him up a ton. And yeah, I know he was the last car in the lead lap, but if you're that much slower, if you're the leader that's that much faster, I should say, to a slower car, I think you should make it past him a lot quicker, especially with a different line, cleaner air on the nose, and you still didn't make it happen. That, to me, was the first instance where I'm like, oh boy, this something might be up with the car. And then the lead started slowly going away, even when they weren't in lap traffic. And we saw the last 3, 4, 5 laps that just reversion back to the rest of the field. Either the handling went away, he might have burned the tires off. Tires were very important today. But either way, it's tough, and that's where, this is the series you got to learn with it. You have to learn in the Xfinity series how to control your car over the short, medium, and long runs a lot, how to conserve tires. And Hill and Allgaier were the two guys that were breathing down his neck, and they were the two guys who ultimately beat him because they were able to take that experience and use it to their advantage. I want to thank you, Andrew, for the $2 super chat. Austin Hill is him. RCR has a bright future. I agree. I think that if RCR can obtain one more charter at some point, Austin Hill has a bright future with that team. I think that, while he's going to be around a while as a driver, Austin Dillon will be really good for that team behind the scenes, kind of the way that Jeff Gordon is for Hendrick Motorsports. And Jimmy Johnson might be in the future for Legacy. But I agree, RCR, I think, does have a bright future. We've seen it since about 2020. That team kind of hit rock bottom and slowly but surely has been getting faster and faster. For a while, we thought it was just Tyler Reddick, but we see Kyle Busch come in and first couple weeks completely outperform what Reddick had done just on speed alone, as well as at the Super Speedway of Daytona for the 500. But very impressive run overall. I think at the moment, if I had to say the early Championship 4 championship favorite, I'm going to say Hill. Now, Jake brings up that Hill and Allgaier pitted a lap after Smith. I don't think one lap's making that much of a difference. I think it's how they drove the cars. Now, I think with Kyle Busch pitting way before, that 5 or so laps, 5, 6, 7 laps extra on tires, that would make a difference. I don't think one lap would make that much. Now, Napa Racing Fan 927 says RCR over Hendrick at the moment. I wouldn't go that far. That is, again, 2 drivers against 4. Chase Elliott did show some speed before. Again, we'll talk about the injury in a moment. Kyle Larson is Kyle Larson. Alex Bowman's been fast to start with. Byron, I worry about Byron long. But I won't say too much on Byron just yet. And then you got Austin Dillon, he's hot or cold, and Kyle Busch is Kyle Busch. So I wouldn't say they're even at the moment. I still think it's like HMS Trackhouse RCR if you're looking at Team Chevy. But this year, if this stuff continues, I could definitely be talked into saying that there is a now let's talk about the big news of the weekend here before we sign off. Real short stream today. We'll do a longer one after the Cup race tomorrow, but I think we should touch on the Chase Elliott. It was reported last night, and I did a video on this as well. If you haven't seen it on the channel, it's a little outdated. It doesn't have the full injury other than in the comments. But Chase Elliott was reported last night to have broken his leg. I believe the report was he had a broken tibia. I love how dude's so ignorant about, real quick about the chat, dude's so ignorant about Byron. I mean, well, if Byron can perform better, I'll sing his praises. I'm not going to kiss your driver's ass because he performs 25th every week. But going back to this really quick, he broke his tibia in a snowboarding incident, and I'll say this, he's going to be out indefinitely. He had to be rushed into surgery. It's interesting to see how the fallout for this is going to be. Now, of course, first and foremost, we're going to, wish the best for Chase Elliott. I don't think anybody is going to be, I don't think anyone should talk about anything first and foremost without thinking first about him as a person. I mean, and I'll talk about it a bit in depth here and as well as on Wednesday. But this injury it sucks to have. I have broken my leg before. I have broken my tibia before, as well as other things in my leg around there, and it's a debilitating injury for somebody to try and be athletic in any way. And the fact that it happened on his left leg, meaning the breaking leg, it's difficult to look at. And I don't want to speculate too much. I'm only going off my prior experiences with a similar injury. But for me, at least, I was injured the week before the 2012 Daytona 500. I had broken my tibia, the lower part of it, kind of separated the growth plate from the bone, broke my ankle and foot, as well as a couple other things. Now, I followed everything the doctor said, had the normal appointment, checkups, everything like that. And the recovery process for me, I wasn't really back to normal athletically till late May that year. I remember I was in 8th grade that year, and I didn't get back to playing football with my friends, playing basketball, really walking, running, until about late May of 2012, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before the Coke 600 that year, to give a time frame. So, if you think about NASCAR at the time, the week before the Daytona 500, it's like I want to say it was the night before the Clash that year, or the shootout back then. And so if you want to add all that together, I believe the Coke 600 was the 12th race. And so you have 12 points races 1 week before, so 13. It's about 15 weeks was how long it took for me to recover. Now, I injured a lot more than just my leg. And yes, I was on crutches, GN fan. But I was also, because of how well I took care of my injury, for the most part, other than 1 or 2 things here or there, I was 6 to 8 weeks earlier on my recovery than I was originally planned. I was told I wouldn't be back to normal till about July. And so I was about a month and a half, 2 months quicker on my recovery. And part of it was I didn't rush myself back. I didn't put extra strain on myself. Now, Elliott can come back somewhat injured. We saw it with Carson Hocevar. We saw Kyle Busch was hobbled. I'm not saying that it's going to be as long by any means, because these drivers will drive through pain. We've seen it before. So you can cut off time depending on whenever they give the immediate, range. As at the moment, it's indefinite because it takes a while to really guess the recovery time. But what I would say for Elliott, and where I worry, is that he tries to come back too. I definitely wouldn't, if I were Kendrick, he's not doing any Xfinity races. Find another one of their drivers, or a Chevy driver for that, and go from there. But where my worry is now we have, maybe he's, I wouldn't have him back for Talladega, or if he was, have him start the race for the points, and then have somebody like Josh Berry or Justin Allgaier, somebody who you can trust to be solid in that car, be in that car. Because I tried to actually hurry my recovery up twice. First off, I got the cast off too early. I can tell you now, it is the most excruciating pain I've felt in my life. Getting, having no support on that broken area. It was worse than the actual break. I didn't really cry when I broke it. It hurt like hell. But I probably had the adrenaline going too. It was during a basketball game. But getting that cast off and being put in a boot too early was worse than the initial injury itself. And for me, where I think of Elliott in this is, I hope they don't try and rush him back too soon, because that pain you cannot ignore it. It is terrible. And then I also tried to walk in the boot before it was too early, and I tweaked something. It wasn't bad. It didn't hurt my recovery at all. But it's a very fine line. It's a very fine line in a recovery process, and it just takes patience. It takes slowing down. It takes stuff that race car drivers probably don't want to hear. Now, GN NASCAR Fan 24, kind of getting back to the racing aspect of things. If Barry races at Richmond and Martinsville, could be a top 5. Maybe. Barry, this is a huge opportunity. Barry is going to be put in a championship level car with a championship level team and a championship winning crew chief. For Barry, we're going to see just how good he stacks up against the Cup guys. And I think that he's not going to perform at the level that Chase Elliott did. Chase Elliott is a top 3 to 5 driver in the Cup Series. There's no way around it. Anyone who says otherwise is like trying to be obnoxious in being a defiant, anti-Elliott guy or fan, I should say. I would say that if Barry runs, say, like 8th to 15th, right? I think that would be a really good showing. Like, hey, this man can jump in on a moment's notice and run competitively in a competitive truck. Or car, I should say, not truck, car. If he outruns any of his teammates consistently, if he outruns Byron, or if he outruns especially Bowman, or, God, if he outran Larson, at that point, Cup guys, Cup teams better be coming with contracts in hand, because at that point, he's shown he's earned it. My expectation is he's going to be the 4th Hendrick guy out there. He's not going to be bad, not going to be great. He'll be top 10, I think, in maybe 1 or 2 races, depending on how long it takes. But man, it's such a tough deal for Elliott fans. I can say, as a junior fan who in 2012 and 2016 my driver sat out races injured, I feel for you. It sucks. And a lot of you probably are former junior fans, and you know the feeling. It sucks. You feel like there's an emptiness in watching a race, seeing your driver's car, your driver's not out there, looking on the leaderboard, and your driver's not there. I'd say with this, you don't have to root for another driver or sit angrily and hate watch it either. But I'd say it, going into it, if I had to give advice for watching the race tomorrow, is pick a couple guys, maybe bet on them, maybe have a fantasy team with them, and just keep track of those fantasy guys. Keep yourself invested in it, and I think it'll be really fun. It'll be a different way of viewing the sport that you never thought of before. And I think for a lot of you, if you don't have a second driver or there's no one you're really that passionate about outside of Chase Elliott, I think you'll see how people like me or like Eric or Darian or, Danny before he was a Bowman fan, how you guys will see how we kind of view races each week, with the lens not really favoring one driver much more over another. It's fun. It honestly is really fun. And I think it'll, for a lot of people, it prepares you for when your driver retires. Now, if you're an Elliott fan, I think he's not going to retire for a long, long time. 15 years at the minimum, I think. I don't think we're talking Elliott retirement talk till we get close to the 2040s, honestly. But I would also say for Elliott, I think the key is 2023 may be a lost season. It might be. And that sucks because Elliott is getting better and better every season. He's more and more consistent, winning all the time. But I mean, if you're going to these heavy braking tracks at different times or road courses like that, it's gonna be difficult for him to race competitively. I can only imagine the amount of pain he'd feel if he were like to try and come back at COTA. I don't see Elliott being competitive. And that's, again, I think that even when Elliott comes back, I think you're looking at him starting the first maybe stage or going to the first pit stop, driver change, and that driver takes over for a couple races until Elliott is 100% back to normal. Long term, though, I really, maybe it messes with his head. I don't think so. I think personally 2023 might be the lost season for him. Or, maybe he makes a Kyle Busch run, like 2015, runs for a championship. After all, Elliott is a driver who gets better as the season goes on. So he'll come back probably in his best stretch even. But I think long term, when you're looking 2024 and beyond, I don't see this really messing with Elliott as much as many people do. I could be proven wrong. I hope I'm not, because Elliott, like I said, is one of the best talents we've seen in this sport, the modern day in a long time. But it's gonna be different. And it's the first time in 7 years that the most popular driver isn't in the field. I don't want to end on too much of a downer note on this. But I want to see what you guys think in the chat. I do want to see your guys' thoughts on this, because it's interesting seeing the way different people view this situation. It's a big situation. Whether you love Elliott, loathe him, don't care either way, the most popular driver being out of a race or multiple cup races is not a good thing. It's bad. It's not good for the sport. There's no way to go around that. I don't care how you feel about Chase Elliott. Him in the field makes NASCAR better. It just does. Both as a racing aspect as well as a fan aspect. And I feel for Elliott fans watching at home that aren't going to see their driver for the next couple weeks, definitely at the moment. And I feel bad for especially the guys or the fans who bought tickets to go to Vegas this weekend and find out on Friday your driver's out. Now, I'm curious on how this changes team owners' look on what drivers do outside of the car. Because Rick Hendrick for the longest time was very cutthroat in, you're just doing cup stuff, stay in this. Occasionally you can go down the Xfinity if you need track time or something. Now, he's been more open. And it was Gibbs that was getting the criticism for not letting Christopher Bell do stuff outside of NASCAR. I'm interested to see how this changes over time. Because the most popular driver being out, this hasn't happened before in the sense of an outside incident taking the driver out. It's happened in the sense of like Tony Stewart, but not the most popular driver. Dale Jr. was never taken out because of something that happened outside the car. If my memory serves me right, I think Richard Petty, when he was the most popular driver, or Bill Elliott, was rarely out for something outside the car, or ever was out for something outside of racing in NASCAR. So it's going to be really interesting. But looking at the chat here, Noah Coleman, like you said, leg injuries aren't as bad as like back or neck. So yeah, I think he will be fine. I agree. He'll be fine eventually, I think. It's just a matter of not rushing it. Milton says, the last thing I want to see is Elliott come back, run a race, and struggle to get out of the car. We want Elliott at full strength when he comes back. Edelbog says, ratings will definitely take a small hit. Elliott is so beloved. People may not care to tune in without him. That's going to happen. I think it will. Now, if it takes a hit or if that outside presence and reporting, I mean, it was, I think, like one of the number ones or top stories on SportsCenter, as well as other sports sites. It was top trending on Twitter at one point. So it's a big deal. People outside the sport were talking about this. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot. There's a lot. I see other fans talking about, their drive, having to deal with this, either retiring or something like this with their drivers. Spencer brings up a good point. Fractured tibia, though, takes 3 to 6 months to heal, but I honestly hope his full recovery is sooner than that. I can't estimate. I only can say from my personal experience, it took about 3 months. But that was with me following everything. And again, Elliott's going to have the best doctors in the country to talk to with this, the best probably physical therapist to help when it comes to getting mobility back in in that leg, because if you're not moving that leg for a while, you lose a lot of that muscle. I remember I broke my right leg. I had a cast up my leg, couldn't move it, couldn't do anything for about 3 months, and I'm a very active person. And my leg, when I got taken out of the cast, was a little over half the size of my other leg. So it's gonna take It's gonna take a lot of to get back to complete normalcy. Uh, Tinsley, as you pass it on to me, I'll pass it on to you, Tyler. Gia NASCAR fan with a good question here. Who did I support when Dale Jr. was out in 2016? No one. Actually, that was the lowest. That was the lowest I think I had ever been interested in NASCAR. That was actually what sparked me to start this channel. Because I didn't want to fall out from NASCAR like a lot of people had. I didn't want to be bitter about it, one day. But I didn't support anyone. I watched for some things. I was interested. I watched the races. I watched all the races. I was entertained. But no, I didn't root for anyone outside. By the way, let's get 12 more likes before we end out this baby. We got 88. Very good Dale Jr.-esque number of likes. Let's get to 100 and then we'll wrap this thing up. I'll talk a little bit more about what we have here. Milton brings up, it's silly to think Elliott shouldn't have been snowboarding. I mean, it's dangerous and it's right before a race weekend. I wouldn't do it. I think it was poor judgment on his part, personally. I don't think he should have, personally. I think he should have done that in the offseason. He has every right to live his life the way he wants to. He could have done the same thing falling down the stairs or, getting in a car crash on the road. That could have happened, but I think he should have been a bit smarter with his time. Thank you, Eric, for the 10 gifted memberships. Starting after Easter, I think we're going to start doing some member-only streams in some of my spare time. I'm looking for when I can do that romance novel stream and read one of those, if that's going to take me forever. I just need to find the right amount of time to do it. I don't want to rush through it or do it in parts. But we will be doing that. But to remind everybody, we have a stream tomorrow after the race, tomorrow evening, after the Cup race, 5-10 minutes after, just like today. We're going to talk about everything with that. Tuesday night, we're on IDK Players channel. Going to be doing the NR Cup Series Race 3 at Darlington with Gen 6 cars. Going to be a lot of fun, 400 miles of Darlington. And a reminder on this too, we are 2 races into a 10-race season with 8 races remaining. 34 drivers are within 1 race worth of points of the championship lead. So a huge championship fight with 8 races to go, heading into probably the biggest gauntlet track the series has to offer. And then Wednesday night on Danny B Talks channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the NASCAR Weekly Podcast. We're going to talk all about this Elliott news. I'll probably talk even in more depth about my injury and what I thought, with Elliott's. There's any updates on Elliott, we will talk about that, even if it's during the show. But we have a ton to go over this week, ton of stuff to cover. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and I think that you guys will enjoy. But I think that about wraps it up. I've had a lot of fun doing this today with you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know it was last second and I didn't stream yesterday. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. I can't wait to see you all tomorrow. Congratulations to Austin Hill on his victory today in the 2023 All-SCO Uniforms 300. And till next time, till tomorrow night, have a good one. Have a good night, y'all.